Welcome to Gravity High Voltage Garage Clips. In this section, we're going to discuss subconscious movement. The questions come up, what about form? If you're viewing the high voltage workout, you look and see what's happening. Why am I not correcting form all the time? What if I see somebody reaching down and I see their back going into flexion as they catch the ball? There's a certain level of encouragement, and this is a great question. This is one of the kind of tricky parts of applied functional science, is that we have to agree that movement in general is subconscious. If I had to consciously think about everything that's involved with a step forward and as I reach to grab something, then that's going to get real tricky. It's a grace gift that my body and the proprioceptors and the musculoskeletal and the osseous structures all know exactly what to do. Now sometimes they end up taking a hit, and there's where those injuries occur. We talk about subconscious movement, and I want to teach you to get to the level. It's going to take some time to get through the logistics of running the circuit. Once you get through and you get comfortable with how the circuit's run and it begins to run itself, that's one of the beautiful things about it, and you're just there to clean up the message, or if the message gets diluted about an exercise, you're there to clean it up. The cool thing about Gravity High Voltage is it then becomes a screening ground to observe subconscious movement. What I mean by that is we've separated the exercises by body part, and you'll see that I don't get into a lot of isolation of here's a hamstring exercise, here's a biceps exercise, here's a rectus abdominis exercise. We group it. We have shoulders, we have trunk, we have legs. The reason we did that is if you take a look at the legs in all three planes, you're going to get a glimpse of the subconscious reactions that in particular client is having. So if I step forward, if I see Mrs. Jones step forward into a lunge, and I have the medicine ball going to the right or to the left, what we're doing is we're adding the transverse plane to a sagittal plane movement. So as I step forward and I drive the knee forward and I take a ball and move it to the right, there's now some different forces that are moving down into the knee. I'm interested in the real McCoy. I want to see how my clients move when I'm not around watching them, because the minute they walk out that door, I can almost guarantee that they're not thinking about where their knee is as they squat down to grab their kids, or they're going into the back of the trunk to get the groceries. So this takes a little bit of time to master the circuit, and then you start to use the whole concept as a screening tool in all three planes. So I've got screening tools to see how my client's shoulders are moving, how my client's trunk is moving, and how my client's legs are reacting as well as moving. One of the things that I thought was really interesting was when I first started to dabble around in yoga. And if you've ever done this before, the first time is pretty interesting. You've got chanting and you've got people, it seems like everybody in the room knows what's going on except you. And you know, I've done it probably about 15 times, and I have to say I kind of still feel that way, primarily because I don't know the mantras or the chants or whatnot. The reason I'm discussing this is because as I went into that environment, I expected to be able to do a lot of the movements. But when I didn't get success, or I got in there and I felt like I am not able to do 3/4 of the things that some of these people in here are doing, primarily because of my hamstrings, that every once in a while my teacher or yoga instructor would come by and tweak something, and I'd say, that's the tool I needed. I needed something under my hips to raise my pelvis, to give a little slack to my hamstrings for me to do that movement. Then she introduced me to, hey, you know, you look like you could really pick up and benefit from the practice of yoga. How'd you like to have a private session? What a great idea. Now, of course, a client is going to come to you, and as I did to her, well, what am I doing wrong? Just give me everything right now. That's just not going to work. You might get one particular tweak, but if you really want to master something, you're going to need additional instruction. The reason I bring this up is if you use the Gravity High Voltage as a screening ground, and you can offer that same type of service to your clients, and with encouragement, you're saying, hey, Mrs. Jones, I understand you're doing a great job in here. You've made it to 3 Gravity High Voltage circuits. How are you feeling? You know, ask questions. Maybe I noticed that when she goes into an anterior lunge with a right rotation, that I see a little something on her face that's giving me a sense that she's having discomfort. So maybe I ask questions about that. And maybe I step to the side and have her do a couple movements and tell her that, you know, I'd really like to help you with this. This is a great ground to kind of manage your overall conditioning. If you really want to hone in on that and get rid of that pain, perhaps I can help you in a private session. So it kind of feeds the business as well to be able to screen multiple people at the same time. And it takes time. It's not something you're going to just get right away. If we talk about subconscious movement, for example, at the knee, one thing I noticed is today I took a look at my anatomy books. And I like to look at my anatomy books, but they frustrate me as well. As maybe you've seen one of the presentations on Gravity Personal Training, is that I get real frustrated and I feel terrible for muscles. They're not given enough credit. The things that they do, the forces they produce, the punches that they take, the hits they take for us, I just don't feel like it's justified. And it happened again as I look in my anatomy book and I look at the first page I open is knee extensors. I look across the column, I see the rectus femoris, vastus medialis, vastus intermedius, vastus lateralis. Screen across here to action, muscle action, and at the top, rectus femoris, flexes hip, extends knee. Vastus intermedius, flexes or extends knee, I'm sorry. And then what nearly brought a tear to my eye was I looked at vastus medialis and vastus lateralis, and it says as above. Now that was a sad moment for me, because I know that if movement is subconscious, and I work in 3 planes of motion, and I know that I'm going to see forces on the knee in the frontal plane, in the transverse plane, as well as the sagittal plane. There's got to be muscles that are helping to decelerate those forces or create the explosion of the move. Take a look at your DVR or your TiVo. I went high def last year, and I'm a goofball, and I get on SportsCenter, and they'll demonstrate an injury or they'll show highlights, and you get to see really cool transformation zones, which means they're going from one motion, they're decelerating, and they're exploding in a different direction. Take a baseball pitcher, for example. I saw one video and I kept rewinding in slow motion. It's all kinds of cool stuff you can do with these things. And they're showing a pitcher get a hamstring strain. And the hamstring strain is occurring during the transformation of decelerating the momentum of mass of the upper body as it goes through and the other leg goes up, and you can just hear the hamstring being lengthened in the sagittal plane, in the transverse plane, and in the frontal plane. You start to see him. I rewinded to another pitch, and during the one where he got injured, he comes all the way down and he goes past his threshold, and you can almost, again, hear the pain because you can see the tear, you see the strain as he goes past his conditioning point. If functional movement is subconscious, I guarantee he wasn't thinking about his hamstring when it got injured. If it's subconscious, and if we know that it's acted on all 3 planes and 2 directions in each plane, so I have an abduction and adduction, then I know that I need to recreate forces or environments for that type of training to occur. I'm a big Carson Palmer fan. When he tore his leg, tore his ACL, you take a look at his leg, it's extended. Somebody comes in from the side and gives them that impact from the side, so he gets that valgus force, or it rips the leg this way while he's in extension, ACL, MCL, all kinds of tears there. So not to say that we can train for something like that to happen, but if you're shuffling or going from one direction to the other, back and forth, and you're in all 3 planes, I'm running forward and then cutting, then all 3 of those planes are affecting the knee. If I'm simply training in a sagittal plane environment and I'm creating force in that one plane, then the degree of transfer is questionable. If we go back to our fundamentals of specificity, the SAID principle, specific adaptation to impose demand, then we need to take into consideration those forces. So that's why you see all these functional exercises where they're standing, where their knees are on the glide board, or you're rotating, you're using the body as a whole so that those muscles are working in conjunction with the rest of the body. To bring it back home, subconscious movement is occurring all around in the gravity high voltage circuit. Take a look at the joints, at the movement, at the macro and micro abilities of your clients, and you'll see quickly that there's an athlete, there's someone who's new to exercise, they're all athletes. But what is if I have an athlete and they're doing a lunge and you see their knee and it's going way past maybe a neutral box position, the forces are going to be there. If it's swimming around, then that's an opportunity to talk to him. If it's swimming and you see a wince, that's an opportunity for you to have a private. If, for example, there is movement, that's fine. The knee moves that direction. It adducts, abducts, it rotates, it extends and flexes. So again, the subconscious activity that's happening in your high voltage circuit is a great tool. It's going to take some time to get the circuit down, but once you do, you're always concerned about form, but again, it's a great opportunity to see that stuff happen and then focus on form in a private. So we'll see you next time in the Gravity Clubhouse Garage Clips.